Most voters think reform has a problem with extremists. We're going to read into this exclusive from iNews, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an exclusive from iNews with the headline that most voters think reform has a problem with extremists. 2/5 of the public think reform is a racist party compared to 30% who disagree. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. So, obviously, before any reform fans start kicking and screaming in the comments, let me just make something very, very clear here. This is a poll, so don't take it so seriously. It is just one poll. Just make sure you take that with a pinch of salt. Like I say, with any polls, any predictions, always take them with a pinch of salt, guys. Really, really important to understand that. However, I do believe that there are parts of the reform that is there are institutional racist problems within reform. Just like, and I've said this to you guys before, there is some problems with certain Green Party members or candidates within the Green Party when it comes to one or two transphobic issues as well. We've had them in the past, and obviously some of them have been kicked out. There have been one or two that still have not, as far as I'm understanding. We also know that Reform have had some of these really vile candidates, which Nigel Farage has, whether we agree or disagree, has kicked some of them out, but not all of them as well. But we don't hear too much about the Labour Party. We know that the SNP have had their problems in the past as well, and we obviously know that Labour had theirs with their sort of so-called purging of the left, if you want to call it like that. And we all know that the Conservatives have their own rats in their sewer as well. So no party is perfect whatsoever. However, that Reform has it really cleared out most of the extremists? And that's the question that we really need to ask ourselves. Have they really cleared enough of those people? Do we think that Reform has changed as a party? Like, really tried to be a more, wouldn't say extreme right, but maybe a bit more right than extreme right, as some people want to say. I wouldn't call them centre. That's not a right way to call them. But do you think that Reform as a political party has changed in any way? Let me know what you honestly think down in the comments below. Let's have a read of this, you guys. So more than half of voters think Reform UK has a problem with extreme candidates and prejudice, polling has revealed. So Reform, under leader Nigel Farage, hopes to utilise the collapse of the Conservative support after successfully seeing 4 MPs elected to Parliament. It's 5, actually. And by the way, my last video was recorded before the 5th candidate came in. Yeah, that one where everyone keeps saying it was 5 MPs and you've got the title as 4. Yeah, I know. That's why it was recorded before the 5th MP was announced. Just saying. But the post-election polling shows public concern over the party vetting of candidates, views on waste and handling on issues like immigration. The data suggests without improving the party's reputation, Farage could struggle to build a broader coalition of voters. So Reform sources said the party was aware there had been a poor vetting of candidates ahead of July's snap election and insist that this was being overhauled. Now, this is a big problem for them. Now, yes, you can argue that you could argue a point that perhaps that because the general election was kind of like called out of the blue sort of thing, you can make that distinction and say, yeah, well, why was it called out of the blue, yada yada yada, which is totally understandable, guys. That doesn't change the fact that they couldn't vet their candidates. Now, Nigel Farage argued that and his party argued that they used a company to do this, saying that it was their job to vet them when it's specific. And the story is, obviously, for those who don't know, the company actually specifically said that they would provide the party with the tools to vet their candidates, not actually vet their candidates themselves. So again, it's the party's own fault for not vetting their candidates. Okay, I'll be very clear about that. So it's their ownership and responsibility that they have to take on this, you guys. It's really, really important. Spokesperson said the perception of the party shows through the polling was wrong, but clearly thinks that exists will continue to combat it efficiently. 2/3 of adults polled by Facoldata immediately after the election, 64%, agreed Reform must do more to deal with extreme candidates, rising to 72% and among Tory voters. So this is their polling. This is the source Facoldata for Britain's Future, example of 2,502 Great British adults here. So, Britons who agree with the following statement that the Reform Party is racist, 41%. The Reform Party is an important new voice just saying what most people think, 43%. 45% says the Reform Party is bravely outspoken. 49% say the Reform Party says things that others don't have the courage to say. That's a very high number, 49%. The Reform Party is mainly a mainstream party with a right to their view, 43%. The Reform Party should not change their approach, even if some people think that they go too far, 40%. So a very low percentage of people, a bit lower than the other ones there. The Reform Party needs to do more to ensure that they don't have candidates with extreme views. A very high 64% there. So many people who are backers of Reform just want them to get rid of the candidates with extreme views. That's what people believe there. The Reform Party risks being prejudiced into debates about immigration, 51%. Yeah, so they don't want them constantly talking about immigration. That gives an indication that while immigration is obviously the main factor that people back Reform because of their stance on immigration, it shouldn't always. Obviously, there needs to be there's other things as well. But we know that they've talked about other things because Nigel Farage has shown it in the debates, obviously, as well. The Reform Party says things that they shouldn't say, 45%, and the Reform Party is mainly a dangerous and diverse party of 43%. So among Reform voters, 59% agree that the party must do more to ensure they don't have candidates with extreme views, with 16% disagreeing. Most voters think Reform bringing prejudice into debates about immigration. Just over the respondents, 51% agree, compared with just 20% who did not. And 2/5 of the public think Reform is a racist party, 41% compared to 30% of those who disagree. Conservative voters are split on the issue, with 37% saying the party is racist and 34% saying the party is not. Reform voters themselves reject the idea it is a racist party by 86% to 4%. That would be 14% if my maths is right. But still, a vast majority of people who support Reform do not accept that it is a racist party. Some 45% of voters, however, say Reform is bravely outspoken, and 49% said that the party partly simply says things that others don't have the courage to say. Reform spokesperson said the study is a high partisan and many of the questions are leading to desired responses, opaque and confusing. Questions such as mainly or say things that they shouldn't say are so subjugated as to nearly meaningless. That being said, it is notable that upwards of 40% said they would consider voting for the party. As to the point about candidates and perception, nobody is more aware than we are about the need to significantly overhaul our candidate selection and vetting process. The party's leadership has repeatedly stated in recent weeks that the need to professionalise the internal party structures is a key priority for precisely these reasons. The perception is wrong, but it is clearly one that exists, and we will combat it efficiently as we move forward. So it's also here. So Britons who would never vote for Britons who would never vote for Reform, Conservative and Labour. So according to their sample of 2,500 adults there, 49% of them said they would, so nearly half of these people said they would never vote for Reform. 44% said they would never vote Conservative, and 34% would say they would never vote Labour. Now, it's really, really important that people's perceptions can really change, and just because they say it in this poll does not mean that they will not change their mind down the road. And that's really, really important to understand. Just because they're saying it now does not mean that half of these people are going to say this in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, etc. You just can't assume, yeah? You just can't assume that everyone's going to stick that. People change their minds. People change their opinions. It's perfectly normal to do so. Just like some of you guys in the chat. You've changed your minds about things. Some of you may have been Conservative voters and now Reform voters. Some of you have been Labour voters. You've switched to Lib Dems. Some of you may have gone from Liberal Democrats to Greens, or Conservative or Labour to Greens as well. And some have even gone from Labour to Reform. People are allowed to change their minds. So, like I said, don't take this too seriously. So the A Tank British Future, who commissioned the polling, said it suggests Reform suffers with more of a reputational problem than UKIP did in 2015. Sandra Kadwa, director of British Future, said, after an election campaign marred by scandals over racist candidates and campaigners, often dropped only after media pressure, Nigel Farage has work to do if he's to clean up Reform's reputation on racism. Yes, the whole candidate thing, that thing by Channel 4, was a massive, massive blow. I think perhaps maybe Reform might have gotten maybe would have gotten maybe 1 or 2 more seats if it wasn't for that. But whether you like it or not, the facts and what was said in those videos were very clear as bright as day. So it was really damaging for Reform, I feel. Nigel Farage claimed at one point in the campaign to be in the effective opposition to Labour and did secure 4 million votes, but now heads a party of just 5 MPs. It says 5 MPs. Why did you say 4 up in the bottom, up the article earlier? If he wants Reform to be treated as a mainstream voice, and indeed if he wants to break through and seek broader support, the party will need to be much clearer where he draws the lines on prejudice. The think tank also suggested that Reform had a ceiling on the level of cross-party support it could command, with half the public, 49%, insisting they would never vote for Reform, including half of 2024 Tory voters, 51%. Like I said, people can change their voices now, can change their voices down the road, but it's about the here and the now of what people are thinking, and it's just a broad conduct of polling by the iNews on about 2,500 British people and what they're thinking. Doesn't mean this is what everyone thinks. It's just a poll with a distinction of what some people actually think. Like I said, take it with a pinch of salt. But it's interesting numbers to say the least. And I do think that if Reform, in my opinion, wants to be taken as... I don't take them as a serious party, guys, because they're not a political party. They're a company. It's really, really important to understand that. And while they are saying things that may appeal to people, they're not appealing to me personally. Some of my viewers I know don't find it appealing. I think some of the language and tone that Nigel Farage and his party use, I think is extreme and is unnecessary. I do believe that some of it is too far. Obviously, I don't agree with Reform's policies, which we vehemently disagree. I know with some in the chat, but I also believe that there is a way to talk about these issues, and that sometimes the language that they use, in comparison to what the language that myself and people on the so-called centre left is extremely different. I wouldn't say their language is as bad as those of Republicans over in America, because it's over there in America it's far, far worse. But it's certainly going up, moving up the levels towards it with the kind of language. And I do hope that that Nigel Farage's party, after this general election, we do see a bit toned down of the language. And we actually see some good being done in those constituencies under Reform MPs, and actually show it. Because if they actually show that they can do the work, then more people should vote for them if they have shown the work and not just actually said that they're going to do things. Keir Starmer said, action, not words. Well, you've got 5 MPs. So let's see, in those 5 constituencies, the action and not the words. So what do you guys think? What do you guys make of this polling? What do you guys make of some of these numbers? Is this something you read into? Do you believe that the Reform Party is racist? Do you believe there are elements of the Reform Party that is racist? Do you don't believe that there's no racism whatsoever in Reform UK? Do you believe that Nigel Farage has some work to do within the party? Let me know your thoughts and more in the comments section down below. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button. Like button would be greatly appreciated. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video, and subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you could do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to catch you all very, very soon.